Hello, everyone. We are here live, our second time this week, with a really, really cool webinar on practicing like a pro. And I think this is going to be so helpful for just about every level of animal communication learner out there, because it's one of those things. There are some really basic things that really are troublesome to every single learner, and they stop us in our tracks and they prevent us from moving forward. And no matter how much we want this, it's enough to just derail our dreams, and it's really unfortunate. Practice is one of those, and every single teacher out there is going to tell you, practice, practice, practice. That's how you advance. That's how you move forward in this. And unfortunately, it's true. In our webinar earlier this week with 4 different animal communicators, professionals, every one of them, even the ones who started off with this at birth, and they had this talent early on in their lives, and didn't have to pick it up later in life like a lot of us. Even then, they had to practice and refine their talents and skills, and it still took a while. And so practicing is the way to go. And there are so many roadblocks to practicing. You wouldn't think there would be, but there are. And I run the Speak Good Human site, which is all about practice. And the reason why it is there, and the reason why I started it, is simply because I was having issues with how the teacher was running practice sessions during my first workshop. It wasn't working for me, and it wasn't working for quite a few other people. And I thought, there's got to be a better way. And since then, I've heard from many, many people who felt the same way, that they're having issues. They really want to do this, and they can't, because they try. We'll talk about all the ways that things get off track. But today we're going to be talking with a really awesome animal communicator and teacher. And she's got such enthusiasm, and her background is in education as well. So she really knows how to teach. And she's always thinking of different ways to help you get where you need to go. And so that's why I invited her back today. We've had her back in the past, coming on to answer questions. But today we have Sarah Jane LeBlanc. She's from Scotland, and she's called the Pet Whisperer. And she is a world traveling healer and communicator and teacher. And she actually has created her own method called soul to soul connection. And it makes this intuitive way that she has, an intuitive technique, really accessible to just about anybody. It makes it really uncomplicated and fun. And she outlines the whole thing in her book, which you can check out on her website. But the interesting part about Sarah Jane is that as a child, she was terrified of animals. And here she got through all of that. She ended up as one of the UK's leading communicators, and she really, really inspires her students. She runs a practice group. She has a practice stand on Speak Good Human as well. And so I think she's just going to be perfect for teaching us all how to practice like a pro and really get past any of the blocks that we're facing to really make every minute count when we're trying to learn this. So I'd like to welcome Sarah Jane LeBlanc to this.
Hello.
Hello. We had so much fun last time. I think it was maybe a couple years ago, but
Yeah.
I'm glad to have you back, because
I'm delighted to be back.
Yeah, I just love your enthusiasm and your positive approach, and you always have really good ideas, and you're very clear about them. And all those things are just so perfect for when you're looking for a teacher. That's what you want. You don't want to be more confused. You want to go in the right direction. And I know what you do is instill confidence and build the confidence. And that's one of the other building blocks. I was telling everybody that there's a few building blocks to learning this. And if you stumble on any of them, you're going to kind of get stopped in your tracks. Practice is one of those, but confidence is kind of a separate self, because if you can practice all you want, but if you don't have the confidence, you're not going to get anywhere.
Absolutely. And there's this mantra, and it was my mantra for many, many years as a teacher. And it's still my mantra, but I have a caveat now, because my mantra was always practice, practice, practice. You can't practice enough. But here's the rub. If your confidence has been shot to pieces and you've got no belief in yourself, or you're scared because you've got bad feedback, then you're not going to be in the right place to practice. Right. So that notion of the practice, which we know is what builds our skill, it's what builds our learning, it's what contributes to our confidence. But if we haven't got those key foundational pieces in place, then you can practice as much as you like, and it's not always going to support you. So it's getting that balance, isn't it?
Yeah. And
confidence is key.
The inspiration for this webinar is, I run the site, and I either get some absolute beginners coming to the site who are really interested in learning this, but it's almost impossible for them to think that they're going to start talking to animals immediately. Not because it's not possible, but because there's so much fear involved. Like, they don't know anything at this point, and to jump to that, forget it. So they kind of need a first step to get them past that, starting point. And the other thing is, then you have the other learners who have just they've taken some workshops already, or read some books, or they're a little ways along and they want to start practicing, and they won't submit their conversations. And so they're practicing in private, and that also does some bad things to you. And we can talk more about that. And the other scenario is they will submit the conversations, but either they don't get feedback fast enough, which if you're a learner, fast enough means immediately. Otherwise, every second after that, you're thinking another
the stories have started.
Oh my God. So,
they're taking so long because they don't know how to tell me politely how terrible I was.
Right. And so before anything else happens, they're gone. They're like, I'm horrible at this career. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm gone. So there's all these scenarios that are playing out, and I want to fix all those for people, or at least provide them with a place to move forward. And I know you had said you have absolute answers for these things, and that actually creating goals that you can stick to is one of the first steps that you would take. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. Because what happens is something really clever happens with our brain when we set a goal, or set a target, or set a clear intention of what we want to do. Then the brain starts to think about ways about how we're going to do that. So it's like, it's different from positive thinking, although I do encourage positive thinking too. But if you're sitting there saying, I can't do this, I'm never going to be able to do this, I'm not going to be like all these other people. And we all have some of those stories running around. But if you're telling yourself, I can't do this, and the brain shuts down, and it contracts, it goes into shutdown mode, because it's not an expansive thought. But if you turn your thinking, or turn your language around, and set a goal and say, okay, I don't know if I've got this totally covered yet, but I'm in the middle of working out how to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do one case study practice by this date. And then your brain's in open mode, and it's starting to look for the opportunities that will take you to where you want to get to, which is getting your first case study done.
And there's probably all sorts of little goals under that, because I tell people, it's important to set goals that are attainable, and
absolutely,
and also a little challenging for you, because you have to push yourself, but not so much so that you're going to set yourself up for failure. So set a goal for talking to an animal, and that's it. Not about getting a good conversation or getting 100%
Just the
right.
first step.
Yeah.
The first step. And I mean, what's beautiful about your site is that it's all laid out for the student. So the student doesn't even need to go and reach out to somebody.
Right.
Because the animals are already there. So I was doing a live coaching call on Wednesday with my own students, and I was saying to them, it's about taking the first step. And so first step for them is reaching out and asking somebody if they can practice. But everyone here, you've got that set up for them. They just need to show up. So it's making that goal achievable and manageable, but also you're right, you need to have that little bit push outside your comfort zone.
Yeah. And just the act of practicing is out of your comfort zone, but it's still maybe not quite enough. I think it needs to be just a little, every time, just push yourself a little more, because you can ask, if you ask, let's say, a friend who's also learning animal communication, I think that's a fairly safe zone. Can I talk to your animal? Because they understand what you're going through and they're not going to judge you. But asking your neighbor who has no clue, and then you're thinking, oh my God, I have to get it right. They're going to judge me. They're going to think I'm crazy. There's all sorts of things.
So, and they even need to be able to talk about and explain what animal communication is.
Yes.
So here's the interesting piece around that, Josh, as I see it. And I absolutely believe, because I've seen it, and also my therapeutic training tells me this as well, is that when you stop yourself short of moving beyond your comfort zone, so whatever it is that you're bumping up against that keeps you contained in the comfort zone, so whatever it is that you're not willing or you don't feel ready to move past, that if that's stopping you now in your animal communication practice, and so you may be doing the safe things like communicating with a friend or doing practices here on Speak Good Human, but you're not putting in your actual findings. So you might be doing the case study work, but you're still in your safe zone, your comfort zone. Those same blocks that you are bumping up against now are going to be the exact same blocks that you bump up against when you want to go out there and make your difference. Okay. So get over them here. Yeah. In an environment where it's safe and you're supported. Otherwise, and I feel like I'm going to cry, but it's just because I feel so strongly about it, because the actual fact of the matter is, if you don't find a way, or you don't work with a good teacher that will support you through those blocks, then you're not going to go out and make your difference. Because if you haven't worked out how to move beyond your comfort zone now, then you're not going to be able to move beyond your comfort zone later. So even if you do a course of study, if you haven't worked through the blocks, or you haven't worked with a trainer that can take you through your individual blocks, then those same blocks are going to bump up against, or you're going to bump up against those same blocks when you want to go out and make your big difference. Okay. And then you won't make it.
Yeah, I agree. And I know we're in a little while, we're going to talk more about how to identify those blocks and how to get around them. But that's a great point, though. It's identify things now and then get past them. So creating their goals. Do you have any guidelines as to how they would start?
Yeah. So one of the things that I like to do is get really clear on your why. So I call it your big why. You might call it your vision. It's the same thing. So get really clear on, why do I want to do this? Why did I join Speak Good Human? Or why did I join this practitioner's training program? Why am I in this practice group? What is it that I want to do? Why am I here? Why do I want to communicate with animals? What kind of difference do I want to make? Where do I want to work? How do I want to show up? And get really, really, really clear on your why. And then feel it. So you can go into a bit of dreamland and do a kind of visioning thing and imagine yourself in the future being the animal communicator that you want to be. And then what I always encourage my students to do is then to write it down. So you've actually committed it to paper. And then any time that you feel that you're not taking steps towards your goals, read your why, read your declaration, read your statement, and really get into the feeling of it, because the brain only goes in two directions, okay? You either move towards pleasure or you move away from pain. And so if there's something painful about the case study practice, and it might be fear, it might be rejection, it might be ridicule, it might be, oh my gosh, what if I get it all wrong? So that's painful. So suddenly the housework seems more attractive, or doing an errand that you haven't done for 6 weeks is suddenly really, really important, because the brain is taking you away from the pain. But if you go into your why and you really feel like that feeling that you desire to have when you're there and you're doing it, and you're in like 5 years from now and you're like, wow, I'm really doing this, I am an animal communicator, then when you're in that feeling, then that's pleasurable, and the actions that you need to take you to that place in the future, to your future self, your actions will be more easily aligned to pleasure of your why, and you getting there. So that's a really powerful, quite a simple exercise, but a really powerful exercise to help you set your goals and align with your goals and make it easier for you to overcome some of the blocks that in the past would have stopped you taking action.
Okay. So would that be the first and most important goal, or would it be the only goal that you need, this one thing?
I think it's quite a powerful piece. It's quite a powerful piece to really dig down into why you want to do this work, because every choice and every decision that you're going to make wants to be aligned to that vision.
Okay.
So even things like joining a practice group, joining the site here, signing up to a course of study, you want to be clear about where you want to get to, so you know what actions to take to get you there. So I think the big why envisioning exercise is really, really powerful. And when you're having moments of lack of motivation or lack of momentum, because we're all human and that happens, when you read your why, it re-inspires you.
Okay.
Like, this is why I'm on Speak Good Human. This is why I want to commit to the case studies. So I find that's quite a powerful all by itself.
Do you usually, before a practice challenge starts, I recommend that they actually make some goals specifically for the challenge, so that they don't just start off with a bang and they're all raring to go, and then after 2 days they already are out of steam because it hasn't gone the way they expected, or they didn't have the time, and so they felt like 2 days are already gone, just forget the rest, whatever they're thinking. They're sort of intermediary goals to this big goal that you're talking about.
Yeah. So what I would do there is called backward planning. Okay. So, and you're quite right. Because I'm quite a visionary person, I can just go into the feeling and I'm right there. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. That's not always easy for everyone. So the reverse planning is like, right, well, that's what I want. That's where I want to be in, say, 5 years' time. So where do I want to be in 1 year? Like, where do I want to be, or even where do I want to be in 4 years? Where do I want to be in 2 years? And then really drill down on, where do I want to be this time next year? Where do I want to be in 6 months from now? 5 months, 4 months, 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, and how am I going to get to that 1 month marker? And that year in the challenge and Speak Good Human, it's like, right, if I know that in 1 month, so say you're 6 months from now, you wanted to be feeling confident asking people to work with their animals. So in 5 months, you want to have started doing a little bit of research. 4 months, you want to be building up making sure your practice is built up. So by the time you come down to 1 month and you're here and you've got this amazing opportunity here in Speak Good Human, then that's where you can say, right, this is where I need to get the foundational pieces in place. I need to be making the best use of the resources. What have they got on for the month? Which ones are most aligned to where I am just now? Mark them in the diary. Mark them in the diary. It makes such a difference. I can't remember the figures, but there is research that shows that people that write their goals down and revisit them have a significantly much, it's in the 90s% more chance them than those that make them and don't do that. So
I
that's
think
how I would do that.
I
Work
think
backwards.
that is why I recommend it as well, because I've read research like that.
Yeah. I think it's 96%. It's really high.
That's amazing.
It's really high.
Well, let's say that, just as an example for people, because I know that I'm just using Speak Good Human as an example, because here we are during the challenge month. People can practice anywhere they want. I encourage them to practice in any practice group, at home, anywhere they want. Speak Good Human is just an option. But let's say somebody says, okay, I'm doing the practice challenge this month. I may have taken a class already somewhere, but let's practice for a month. What would be a reasonable goal for somebody? Would it be X number of animals that you're going to have X number of conversations, or doing something every day?
I would be, so everybody's end goal is slightly different. And I see this with my own students. I've got students on my, professional practitioner program that do 5 case studies a week.
Oh, wow.
I think that's quite impressive. And I often say to them, you don't need to be doing 5 case studies a week. 1 a week that's okay. But that's where their goal is.
Yeah.
And then I'm very careful to say to other students, that's their goal. I don't have that expectation. 1 a week, even 1 a fortnight. So if you can do 1 case study a week, I think that, when you're just starting, 1 case study a week, provided that you're working with somebody that's going to give you constructive feedback.
Right.
And I know that you provide this here on the site. So that's the other thing that's really important. Sometimes we can just be so grateful that somebody lets us talk to their dog, horse, monkey, goldfish, that we just go and do it. But we want to make sure that exchange is fair. And if you're giving your time and your energy to practice your communication skills, then the person, their contribution to that exchange is to take their time and give you honest, constructive, supportive feedback. And it doesn't matter how much you practice, Josh. If you're not getting that, you're not actually gaining and learning from your practice.
Right.
So the feedback's really important.
Yeah. So I know we were going to talk about some of those ways that were not working and they were kind of defeating the practice. That's definitely one of them. And I honestly, if I would say, if you're not working with a teacher, or if you have in the past and you're on the right track, then Speak Good Human is a good place to supplement what you're doing. But if you're only doing it on your own, just with Speak Good Human, it's going to be a challenge, because you're going to have to really dig deep to build your confidence up. And a good teacher, that's where you're going to get the magic is going to happen, is to build your confidence up every step of the way, so that with every single conversation, it builds on each other, and then you get better and better and better.
Absolutely. It's so crucial. It's just crucial to your development as an animal communicator that you build on each of your case studies, even if one didn't go so well.
Right.
I absolutely guarantee that any student that brings a case study to me that didn't go that crash hot, sometimes that happens, I can still find learning in there for them.
Yes.
I can still find something that they can build on or learn from. And so having a teacher is crucial, because it's so easy, especially in the beginning, but not only in the beginning, it's so easy to have our confidence crushed by poor feedback. And sometimes it's not that your work was poor, but the feedback was poor, because the guardian wasn't thinking out the box and you haven't learned how to think out the box.
Right.
So that can sometimes be enough for students to give up. But if you've got a good teacher, then they won't let you give up, because they'll be able to show you how you can learn from that and how you can build on that. So you're absolutely right. It's crucial, because the confidence, we have to be building that each time. And if our confidence slips, you want to have enough of a foundation of past case studies or past experiences where a teacher can support you in seeing everything that was good prior to that not so good experience, and that can will help motivate you.
So tying that into this first point that we're making here, creating attainable goals and sticking to them, a teacher obviously would, help you do that. But let's say they weren't currently working with a teacher, and let's say, back to the example of this challenge, they created the goals. A lot of people still have trouble keeping to goals, no matter how much they want to achieve, they want to get there. Are there any, magic ways to make sure you keep yourself on track? I mean, how do people, some people
some people are more easily self-driven and self-motivated than others. Yeah. And this is another thing, similar to what I said earlier. If you can't crack that, or if you find it difficult cracking that at this stage, you're going to find it difficult cracking as a professional practitioner as well. So, we're using the same skills, the same tools to drive ourselves in our early practice as we are to drive ourselves as professional practitioners. Okay. So it's finding what works best for you. So for some people, like myself, if it's in the diary and there's a date on it and I have to respond to somebody, that works for me because I don't like to let people down. Okay. So if it's in the diary and I know that I need to put my feedback in, or I've committed to putting feedback in, then that's easier for me to do that than if it wasn't in the diary. So even if you're just putting in the diary when you're going to do your case studies, and maybe have an accountability buddy. So whether that's somebody else that's practicing, or maybe it's somebody that's got nothing to do with the challenge here, but somebody that will be able to check in and say, did you get that task done? And if you didn't, why not? So it's not, you don't want to buddy up with someone that'll say, oh, it's fine, just let's go and have a bar of chocolate and a cup of coffee. You want somebody to say, hey, you told me this was really important to you. So why have you not done it?
Yeah.
That's the kind of person that you want to have at your back. Okay. So if you're not working with a teacher, because a good teacher will do that for you, but if you're not working with a teacher, you might want to consider having a buddy that would take that role for you, take that stance for you.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, because if you can't do it yourself, and not all of us can, then get there another way, and this is another way. It's another great way too, because support in any way you can get it is helpful. And I love the part about putting it on your diary, because it's there then. It's your intention to do it, and you of course can still skip it, but you're more likely to do it than not.
It's in the diary. You're more like, I mean, of course you can skip it. Hands up. I've put stuff in my diary and shifted and shifted and shifted. Of course, we can do that too. The other thing is to reward yourself. So, create a reward. And I don't allow any of my students to reward themselves with the good feeling of just being able to make a difference. That's not the kind of reward that I'm talking about. We're going to feel good when we do the case study practice. We're going to feel even better when we get good feedback. But I want you to, or what I say to students is, I want you to think about something that's more tangible, a gift to yourself. It doesn't have to be a monetary gift. It might be that you create time to watch a movie that you've always wanted to watch. It might be that you gift yourself time in the bath. That's my favorite thing. So big bubbly bath and candles, that's my complete bliss time. So that would maybe be a reward that would really work for me. It might be that somebody cooks you dinner, or you go out for dinner. Everybody's circumstances are different, but have a real tangible reward. So when you're having that meal that somebody's cooked for you, so if you normally cook at home, you could agree with people that you live with that, if I get this done, I would love if you cook dinner. That would be my reward, or we go out for dinner or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it might be that you'll have a walk in the woods with your dogs, or you go on an extra special hike with your horse, but something that's really tangible, so that when you're doing it, it's like, hey, I earned this because I did my case study practice.
That's great. Yeah, I don't work in that way. I'm sort of like, I just do it. When I set my mind to something, I do it. But I can see where what you're saying would work for a lot of people, and why not?
Because most of us don't gift ourselves time. We don't gift ourselves much permission to just have fun.
Yeah.
So if you're setting the goal, say for the month, and you've decided, right, I want to do four case study practices over the month, and I want to attend this live webinar, or this live stream, and this live stream, and that live stream. And if I do all of that, then this is what I gift myself at the end.
Yeah.
So that's another way to do it. You can have micro gifts, but if you manage to do it all, that you maybe gift yourself something that is a bit bigger.
Yeah. When you say case study, is that more than just a conversation?
No, just conversation.
Okay. Because I know sometimes it requires, like a case study could be multiple conversations with the same animal, so you can learn different things. But
sorry, I'm glad that you clarified that. I'll probably keep calling them case studies.
That's okay.
That's just the language that I use with my students, but it's conversation, having the conversation. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else to add on attaining your goals, sticking to them, creating?
I can't think. There probably is. My brain's a little bit tired tonight. So the big thing that works for me is, or works for me in terms of supporting students, is really engaging with your why. Why do you want to do this?
Yeah.
And that helps with the sticking to the goals. It's like, why do I want to do this? And then when you're having that moment of, just connect back in with why it's so important to you. And then that helps create the motivation and the momentum to take the action that's needed to get you to doing the conversation.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned the word action, because those little goals that I was talking about, the ones that get you to the big goal, those almost are sort of like action items to get you there. You've got the big goal, but then you set some action items so that you can take the steps to get there. Yeah. Okay, so here we are. We're doing the challenge month, and we've created our goal, our main goal, and some action items to get us there, and we have our rewards all set up, so we're good to go. How do they choose how to practice? Because they can do it on the site. They can do it on the site. On my site, they have the Q&As already there, so they can read the questions, and then they can intuit the answers and then check their answers right there. That's tricky on its own. It's got some challenges on its own. Or they can just do a freestyle conversation with an animal. And that's just on my site. Then they've got practice groups all over the place. They've got, any number of ways they can start to practice. How do they decide what's best for them? Because it's not best for everybody.
No, and I think I really love how on your site you've got those two options, because animal communication, or certainly learning animal communication, is not a one size fits all. And the same as teaching program, there's a whole array of different teaching programs out there as well. And one teaching program will be a great fit for you, but it might not be a great fit for them. So I think it's really important to get clear for yourself how you best learn, and also what kind of support that you need. And if you can get clear on those 2 points, so how do I best learn? Am I good as a solo learner, or do I need more interaction and feedback? And if you get clear on how you best learn, and then what kind of support you think that you'll need, or what kind of support you want, then that will help you choose the most appropriate mechanisms that are out there.
Okay.
So I think it's interesting you said about the Q&A, and that comes with its challenges. I used to have a similar thing in my first teaching program that I ran. But sometimes you can get so much information that hasn't been put in, because we're human. The guardians are human too. And so they might have forgotten that on 2 occasions their dog loved to eat such and such, they'd only ever had it twice, and so they didn't put it in the list, and you've got it on your sheet and you think you've got it wrong. So if you're somebody that likes detail and you like to dot your I's and you like to cross your T's, then I would be thinking that you would probably want to have more of the freestyle conversation where you can get that feedback. If you're somebody that just wants to dip your toe in the water and you're not really ready yet to step out, the Q&A would be a good fit for
Maybe.
you.
Yeah, I would say yes and no, but no because of what we just said, is because if they're just getting started out and they get things wrong because of exactly what you said, that
or they think they get them wrong
because there's so many variations that could happen. Then their confidence will be gone in a second, and then they won't be able to move on. So,
and that's the tricky part. And one of my students, I think it was 2 years ago, and she said to me, I found this amazing site. It's called Speak Good Human. I said, I didn't know about that. I did a talk on there. And she said, I love it because I can just go in and do the Q&A. No pressure.
Oh, yes.
And so for her, even though she was on my program, that was where she loved to do her case study practice.
Yeah.
And I think she had that she was actually quite a detailed person, but she had that awareness and that knowledge that there might be things that weren't able to be verified, not because they were necessarily wrong. So she went in with that knowing. So she actually found that really helpful.
Yeah.
But I think it's just being clear for yourself as a student. What kind of student are you? Are you good at self-direction? Do you need somebody else to direct you? What kind of support are you looking for? And the same as if you're going into groups. There's some groups that people just chuck pictures and people put comments on. That's not how it happens in my group, because I don't think that's particularly supportive, especially if you're new. So for me as a student, I prefer a more structured process. So that's what I provide for my students. But each learner's different.
Yeah.
And I think once you've got an idea of how you best learn, how you like to engage or not engage so much, that'll help you choose the method.
And how confident you are now, and as a person in general, how much weight you put on other people's opinions, or because I've been in all those types of groups, and I also didn't quite like the ones that people put the pictures up and other people practice with the animals, and then you got sort of kind of very poor feedback. Or no feedback.
Or no feedback.
Yeah, and they didn't really, a lot of them didn't really value the time you put into it. And
you've given a good hour of your time, and then the person just says, "Oh, thanks very much, that's helpful," or they don't say anything at all. That doesn't help you. So that's not allowed in my group. So it's very structured. It goes up on a Tuesday. You've got till Thursday, and every single piece of feedback, the guardian has to give individual feedback, and I think that's more supportive.
I agree. My experience is the same. And the only thing I'll add is that if somebody's really into advancing and they just want to practice, I would say go for any and all of these things, because you can get the great confidence building stuff in your type of practice or working directly with a teacher. That's definitely a great way to go. It's the top way to go. They can supplement that with something like Speak Good Human stuff, because it's self-directed. They're already on the right track with what you're doing, but this gives them more time to practice, more animals to practice with. And then they can go to the other types of Facebook groups and practice there if they want, just to keep going and keep going. And it just depends on how much they want to practice. But I wouldn't only do one. Like, pick a good.
You can have this kind of hybrid. Of approaches. Absolutely. And I think I love what you said there. If you're working with a teacher, and I think your words were, that's the top way to go, and it is. You're going to get there quicker, faster. And I think sometimes, I think one of my newsletters, I put a picture of Everest, and it's like, would you climb Mount Everest by yourself, or would you have a Sherpa?
Right.
Why would it be any different if you want to become skilled in any area.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the top way to go. But any good teacher, or that's my view, so I would be happy to do this. If my students, as one of mine was on your group, I very upfront and say, well, any challenges you have with those case studies, bring them back to me because you're still my student.
Yeah.
And so wherever you're doing your practice, even if it's in another group or whatever, if you've come up against something that you don't understand, then bring it back to me and we'll dissect it and we'll learn from it, and I'll teach you why that happened, or why it showed up for you in that particular way. So when you've got that mix, then you really catapult your learning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say I think it's a challenge to find the right style for you, because along the way in finding which style works, which practice methods, you have the opportunity to kind of crush your confidence and when you're doing the wrong style for you. So you kind of just, I know you kind of just need to look at that end goal again and just keep that in mind. And if one way doesn't work for you, put it aside to say that was an experience. Let's try something else until you start feeling better about it.
And I would see that as a positive, because you're right, Josh. If you've tried something a particular way, so say you've gone to a workshop because your friend went to a workshop and said it was amazing. So you're like, right, I'll go to the next one with you. So you rock up to this workshop with your friend who's been and said it was great because that was what worked for them. And then you get to that workshop, and as the morning goes on, you're feeling smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller because everybody's talking about this that they got and that they got, and this amazing visual. And you're like, bloody hell, I just got that he liked dog biscuits and a picture of a park. Like, why did I even come? So you really can feel your confidence like really starting to close in on you. So a workshop experience might not be the best fit for your style of learning, but rather than come away from there and say to yourself, oh, I'll never be able to do this, I'm not as good as them, blah blah blah, see it for what it is. So let's separate out the drama from the data. And the data is, I had one shot at one type of learning and it just didn't work for me. That's a result, because I know that that's not how I'm going to progress with my animal communication. I'm going to go and look at a different avenue and see how that works for me.
Yeah. Would you say, I know everybody progresses differently and they all have their own challenges and blocks and things that they need to kind of surpass in order to get to their end result. Would you say that if somebody had the goal of, I want to do this, I want to be an animal communicator, whatever that means to them, and they set their sights on it and they set their goals and they do everything they can to progress, are they going to get there? Is it 100% that they'll get there?
With a teacher that's a good fit for them and can help them clear the blocks that will stop them getting there, I believe that's possible. Okay. Absolutely. I do. It's finding the right teacher. And it's what we've said a couple of times now, one size doesn't fit all, and that's for teachers and training programs as well.
Right. Yeah, and I, the right teacher, that is key, because it's not only the right teacher for your personality and the way you learn and things like that. It's also on the other side, the teacher has to know how to teach. And not all of them really do. And they have to know that they have to have a priority of building that confidence, I feel.
Absolutely.
Because without that key component, they can teach all the techniques they want and all the other stuff they want, but building the confidence is what's going to get you forward.
Absolutely. And this is something that I feel really, really strongly about. And it's probably the one area that I am 100% comfortable to stick my neck out on. And I'm not talking about any other particular practitioners, and you know, I'm not talking about anybody in particular. I don't know all the animal communicators that are out there, you know. But what I'm very clear about is that I don't think if you decide to go into teaching, I do not think it is enough for us to teach people how to communicate with animals. I don't think that's enough. I don't think it's enough that we create, for want of a better expression, because everybody can do this if you know, if they find the way to ignite it. So the word's a lousy word, but you know, it's not enough to create animal communicators or produce animal communicators. That's not enough, because if we don't create confident animal communicators, they're not going to go out and make their difference when they leave your tutelage. Mm-hmm. So once they leave your program, they're not going to go out, because the blocks that they face as they moved through it, if you don't have a teacher that can move you through, past and beyond your blocks, then those blocks are going to keep showing up for you after you've passed.
Right.
And actually, the real question is, should you have passed in the first place if you've still got all these blocks going on? But we do know people that do pass courses, and they can't always, they sometimes don't have the confidence to go out and be that professional practitioner that they want to be, and they don't always have enough of a skill set because it's not been nurtured enough.
Okay.
And I don't think that's okay.
Yeah, I agree.
So I just don't. And so if you're looking for a trainer, you want to have somebody that's the right personality match for you, the right teaching style for you. And I'm not saying that everybody has to have a background in teaching. I do. That's my background. And again, when I look back on how this all unfolded for me, it's like, I don't think it was an accident that, you know, I ended up in education and then ended up here. But you don't necessarily have to have somebody that's got a background in education, but you do need to have somebody that has an understanding of how different people learn, because we have different learners. Mm-hmm. And if you are, so I'm a visual learner, mm-hmm. so it's really easy for me to be a visual teacher. Mm-hmm. But because of my teaching background, I know that if I'm just a visual teacher, then I'm going to cut out all those people that are not visual learners. So that's really important for you to find the right style of teacher. So if you are a visual learner, you want a visual teacher. And even if that teacher doesn't teach in any other way, as long as you've got the teacher that teaches in the way that's right for you. So that's really important, that you, when you're looking for a training program and the teacher that's right for you, is their teaching style a good fit and match for your learning style? Mm-hmm. And then is the delivery of the program, is that aligned with how you best learn? And what kind of support is there? And I think a key question to ask, and don't be afraid to ask, because this will happen: what can you do for me? What's part of your program that you can do for me when I get stuck? Because everybody gets stuck at some point. Mm-hmm. And if your teacher can't answer that or doesn't have a strategy in place for that, I think you should maybe just have another little look around. Right. Because we do get stuck. Yeah. We do get stuck.
Yeah. I think you're right. The teaching part, if you're just at that beginning stage, having the teacher as your anchor is great, and then supplementing that any other way you can. Because if you're really into learning, you're gonna try as much as you can anywhere you are. You go out to the bank and you're gonna want to talk to the dog you see there on the sidewalk, or you're gonna. I mean, when I started, there wasn't anything like this site, and I had just finished this long workshop, 15 weeks, and I needed to practice, but the teacher didn't really leave us anything to practice, to continue on or anything. And so I was just going online to find pictures of missing animals, and I wasn't trying to find the animals, but at least there was somebody there who said, here's my animal and here's some of the details. And then I would just try to talk with them, but I have no idea whether they got them right, any information, but I was at least trying all different ways. So I think this kind of approach to trying to, it's not just one way, it's it's a plan that you put together. You piece together yourself based on how you feel and what's comfortable for you and what works for you. But if you've got that goal way out there, get there any way you can, in as many ways as you can.
So I think the important thing there is just keep aligning with your goal.
Yeah.
So anytime you lose momentum or you're just kind of like, oh, I don't know if can I really do this? Just align back to your goal. You'll get back in tune with what your goal is, and then just try a different method. Our animals connect with us in so many different ways. So you might find that you like to do receive information, or you receive information best through pictures, or you might find that you receive information best through the auditory channels, and just being aware of that so that you know that that's how you best practice. So when you're having a tough day, you want to make sure that you're asking the animal to share information with you in a way that you know you receive most easily. So all these kind of little extra tweaks that you can do to your practice to really ensure that you're setting it up for the best possible outcome.
Yeah, and that I've heard this before. I've said it before. That's exactly it. It's a matter of knowing yourself first. You've got to really know what you're all about and what you want and need, and because otherwise you're putting yourself into a path that somebody else has put down for you, and it works for them, but it may not work for you, and then you're going to set yourself up for failure, and
then you're going to feel rubbish.
Yeah.
And then you're going to think that you're rubbish, and then you're not going to do it. So it goes back to that very first thing that I said about you getting to know yourself and how you best like to learn, what kind of support that you need. But do you know, Josh, there'll be people, and you'll know this, there'll be people that come on to this amazing site and they haven't got a clue how to best learn. So they haven't worked that out yet. So if that's you and you're out there watching this and you're thinking, well, I don't know. I didn't know there was any other way to learn apart from how I do it. I don't even know what you would call what I do. So it's like that workshop example I gave. Just give everything a go. And if you feel your confidence closing in, or you feel constricted in any way, that's a surefire sign that that's not your best learning style. So see that as a positive result. It's like, cha-ching, I know that one's not for me. So let's mark that one off and go try something else, and just keep doing that until you find the method or the approach that really fits for you and how you like to.
But if they feel fear or anxiety, that's not necessarily that it's not for them. It's just that they have something blocking.
Something else blocking them. So I think it's reasonable. I certainly expect all the students that come on my program, I expect there to be a level of fear and a level of anxiety around doing the conversations and getting the feedback. I expect that, so I see that as a given. But where it becomes problematic is if you allow that fear or that anxiety to stop you moving forward. And if that's the case for you, that your fear is so big or your anxiety big that you're not actually taking the action, then you will have a unconscious or a subconscious driver that is playing out for you. And it's really important that you work to clear that, because it doesn't matter then what practice method you go to. If that fear is so big, you're not actually going to take the action. So we want to clear that fear first.
Perfect. And that brings me to my next question for you, because here we've set the goal and we've chosen the right practice methods or style for us. We've figured that out for ourselves. And now we're ready to start practicing and getting into it. We're certainly going to come up against some walls along the way. It's not necessarily going to be some smooth sailing. There's going to be lots of bumps in the road. How do we stay positive when we're moving forward? How do we keep that momentum going? Because it's, as I said, like the practice challenge, for example, if people feel like they haven't gotten it within the first week,
I know,
they might give up on themselves, and the whole rest of the month, forget it. I didn't do it the first week for whatever reason. They either didn't find the time, or they didn't feel like they're getting it correctly, or they they planned to do it and it didn't meet their goals. Whatever they came up against, they, it derails what they wanted to do, and so they give up. So how do we make sure that we keep going straight?
So a few different things there, and they're all real live things that happen to students all the time. So I think the first thing is, I think I used this expression in the last question, let's separate out the data from the drama, let's separate out the fact from the fiction, and don't allow ourselves to go, if you find that your head's going down that kind of burrow of oh, I'm no good at this, and I'm not going to do it, I missed it last week, so I'll just miss it this week, I'm sure it'll be fine. If you find yourself going there, you really want to stop. So that's the first thing, like stop and just course correct. So you want to just take a moment to stop, course correct. And I know I've said this, I think, to your last two questions, but it really works here about getting back into your why. It's like, well, why the hell did I sign up to do this? Like, why am I here? Because remember, it's a choice. So you chose to be here. And I also believe that if you landed upon this site or somebody's practice group or somebody's website, I think if you landed there, you were meant to be there. Just to have that feeling. So if you've landed here, then like me, when I first started out, I didn't make a conscious decision to do this, and I kind of suddenly found myself in a place I'd never been before. So if you found yourself landing here on a site like this, and that's because you're meant to be here. So align with your why. Why am I here? Why did I end up on this site? Why was I so enthused? What do I want to do with animals? How do I want to make my difference? Really get back into that why. That is the best place. And it's about feeling it. So it's not just reading it out or saying, well, I wanted to do this and I thought I would do that. That's not what I'm talking about when I ask you to go into your big why. I'm wanting you to go into that future version of yourself. We all have a future us out there waiting for us. So I want you to go there and like, wow, in the year 2000 and whatever, I am a professional animal communicator and I am making my difference in the world at body scanning, because I am so good at body scanning. I'm so grateful that I can feel what's going on in the animal's body. And I make my difference by supporting vets that can't get to the bottom of the physical problems that are going on with the animals. Or it might be in 5 years' time, so in 2025, I want to be one of the top missing animal trackers, because I've lost my dog and I know what that felt like. And I don't want anybody to feel like. So that's me. And it's so amazing that I'm reuniting people with their dogs. So I really want you to get into the feeling, not just reading the words, but to feel it like, wow, that feels so good to go home every day and know I've made this difference. And that really helps us realign with that positive energy, because the body or the mind's quite easy to trick. Okay. So if you're sitting there like, oh, I didn't think I could do this, why did I bother signing up? Then everything constricts and closes down, and you're telling yourself that you can't do it. So everything in your body is responding to that. Yeah. But if you start saying like, wow, I can really do this, and I'm a tracker. I might still be learning it, but hey, I'm a tracker. There's a tracker in me. I'm going to be a tracker. Then the body completely changes and the mind starts to look for the opportunities to take you there. So getting back in touch with your big why helps with momentum, and it helps with positivity.
Okay.
The other thing that you can do, and I know that I've mentioned this before as well, if you're working with a trainer, you'll use them. That's what they're there for. It's what you've paid for. It's what I always say to my students. It's what you pay me for. So you'll use them to keep you on track. You might want to put in your goals to them, and then they can come back and see, how did you get on that goal this week? Or have a buddy of your own. If you're on a site like this, as I said before, it might be your auntie that doesn't let you away with anything, that you say to her what you're going to do. But the best way to stay positive is to remind yourself of all the good work that you've already done.
Yeah.
And so one of the best things that you can do is, I like to, even now, I mean, it's nearly 20 years I've been doing this work, and I still use the same process. I have journals. So I like to record all my communication consultations in a journal. So the animal's name goes down, the date, etc. And then I just put all the notes that are all contained in one place. And what I teach my students to do is that anytime they get anything right, they put a tick or a star or a smiley face or a sticker, whatever floats your boat, just mark it on your notes that you got that right. And if you got something that was completely unguessable, you got something that you just could not have guessed, then you want to give yourself a double or a triple tick. And then when you feel like you're losing momentum or you're losing belief in yourself, you just want to flick back through that journal and see all those ticks and stars and smiley faces, because that's your evidence log. That's your hard evidence of your capability to connect and communicate with animals. So that's a really good one to have that visual, physical representation of the evidence that you did make a connection and did get
and that's another reason why you really shouldn't be practicing in private. You gotta submit.
You don't get that.
No, you can't do any of this.
Get it.
Yeah.
And you might have got something really wowsy and nobody else, if you're in like a Facebook group and everybody else has put their comments up and the person said, yeah, that's right. And yeah, oh no, I'm not sure about that. And you've got this really random thing, like an image of an owl, and this is a real one, an image of an owl in a tree, and nobody's mentioned an owl and nobody's mentioned a tree, and you just thought, that is so random, I'm clearly making it up. But actually, that owl in the tree was the last message before a dog died that they gave to their person. And that's where they said, meet me in the tree with the owl. But if you haven't been brave enough to put that out there, you would just think it was wrong, and it was so random that you must have made it up. But actually, that was a really, really super specific, non-guessable, and also very important message for that person, because they knew that could only have come from their dog.
Yeah, I can say it's very, very, very scary to send in those conversations, especially toward the beginning of this journey. But when they come back and you get things right, your spirit just soars. You have so much confidence. Of course, it's very easy to focus on the things that you didn't get right, but keep reminding yourself that it may not actually be wrong. It just may be something that's unconfirmed, or that, I mean, really, we may have gotten every single thing right, but not everybody knows all the details to tell you that. Exactly. And so somebody in our last webinar said, even the best professional communicators can expect maybe 70% accuracy. I don't know where they get that figure, but that's what they said.
So, I mean, I've read different things over the years, and I think, I can't remember who wrote it, but somebody had said, if you're getting around about 80% accurate, that's good enough.
Okay.
That's good enough. And I think, I have a system that I teach my students where we have a kind of we have 3 validating sections. And so whatever the percentage of accuracy in those sections will be, reflective of the accuracy throughout the rest of the consultation that the person maybe can't guarantee. Because if you're asking questions about your animal that you want to know information on their behalf, then the person can't validate that. But if we go through the process and I'm saying, well, look, you were kind of like 75% accurate in all these 3 areas, so I think it's reasonable to say that you're going to be 75% accurate with the information that can't be confirmed or verified, because that's what the person wants to know. So and we're human,
right?
We're human, and we're human. Of course, we want to get it as right as we can all of the time. That's why we want to do this work, to be accurate and to be the best that we can be. But we are just human as well, and there's always room. There's always room for error. I went and got my hair cut when the hairdressers opened last week, And I was left with this weird bit. My friend, the hairdresser, who's been a trained hairdresser for I don't know how long, accidentally cut too far back. And I've got this weird, is it this side? This weird thing going on with my friend. And I can't do anything about it. I have to wait till it grows in. So that's a competent, trained, qualified professional. And she just made a rookie error. Sometimes it happens. We're human. But yeah, if you're getting that kind of 70, 80%, then that's good.
I always think of that game. I don't know. We call it the telephone game, where kids sit in a circle, and one person starts off, tells the next person something, and you're supposed to then tell the next person. You repeat it, like a secret. And by the end, it's not the same as where it started.
No, we call that Chinese whispers in the UK.
Oh, okay. Well, it's nobody in that game ever feels like it's their fault. It's a fun game. They don't feel like it's, I failed at this. It's just something that happens over time where things shift. You either can't hear it all the way because the whisper is all whispery, or, any number of things.
Or you misheard the pronunciation. And it's quite interesting because that is a fun game. But if you take that into the context of animal communication, that's no fun for the student who feels like they got it so wrong. So it's when we shift the context, and I think this is where, certainly when you're learning, expect to make mistakes, because that's how you're going to learn.
Right. But also take that fun factor and keep it there, because the animals, I think, are probably, they want to make this more fun, just like the Chinese whispers game or the telephone game. That's how they're looking at it, and they're probably thinking, these humans are way too serious.
The words in my head were lighten up.
Yeah.
You get that energy a lot from the animals. It's like, just lighten up. I wish everybody, including the communicators, would lighten up a little bit. But often we're not lightened up when we do it because we care so much, and it matters to us that we get it right. And so we don't want to let the animals down. We don't want to let the people down. And then without even realizing, we create this huge pressure.
Yeah.
And then that can become a block to the communication work.
And that was my next question for you is, there's lots of things that can happen in this whole process, the blocks and the fears and the frustrations, all these roadblocks and these bumps in the road. It's just standard. Everybody goes through them. Is there really any way to avoid them or sidestep them, or do we just have to deal with them as they come?
Well, here's my take on it, and other people might have a different view, and that's okay. So I'm very transparent about the things that I've got wrong, because I have got things wrong in the past, but everything that I've got wrong has never ever ended up being wrong in that true wrong, inaccurate sense. It's just been a huge learning experience. So the time where a missing cat told me he was back home, and the woman asked me to stop emailing her because I was distressing her. That's not why I came into this work. I was horrified and didn't understand why she was kind of shutting me out. Yeah. But she emailed me, maybe about a week later, and she said, you kept sending me information, asking me about my cat, because the cat was telling me he was home. And she said to me in the email, she said, but my cat's dead. And I know for absolute fact that he's dead because I dug up his dead body.
Oh.
So I'm sitting there in my little room and thinking, what has just happened? He just described the kitchen to me and all of that stuff. And I didn't want to go back to her and say, did I get the kitchen right? I'm trying to understand what happened, because she was clearly distressed. And that for me was the moment where I said, I'm not doing this work. I did it. I came in to make a difference, came in to help. I've caused this woman distress and her cat's dead. I've got that so wrong. But what I didn't know at that time was about souls coming back. And so, without getting into the whole big story of it, I let it lie for a while because I was done. Like, I'd hung up my pen and my notebook. I was done. And I happened to bump into somebody, and I was telling them about it, and they said, "No, it sounds like there's been some kind of soul transference going on here." And then when I started to piece the pieces back together, everything fitted. Where she dug the body up was where my communication started when I was tracking
Oh,
that cat. So he'd been knocked over. He didn't realize that he was dead. And
no.
then where she had a new kitten, and where she found the kitten was where he'd taken me to on the last communication and said, "I'm back home now."
Oh,
So he was back home, but in a different physical body.
wow.
But I didn't know any of that stuff then. I didn't know any of it. So I thought that was so wrong and I caused all this distress. But actually, the woman was very kind, given what she'd been through. And we were able to piece it in the kitchen. How could I have known what her kitchen looked like? It's just, you don't know that stuff.
Hmm.
And then she was able to see that there was similar characteristics in this kitten that had been in her previous cat.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, the way that I teach is that I'm very transparent about that stuff because I suppose my ever hopeful and enthusiastic nature is that if I share all that stuff with my students, then they don't need to go through that crap. And I can avoid them hitting those bumps in the road. But what I've learned over the years of teaching is they're going to hit their own bumps. So
Hmm.
there's only so much I can save them from because they've got their own path to follow and their own things to come up against. So that was probably quite a long answer to your question. So yes, I think we've all got our own bumps that we're going to come up against. And if you're working with somebody that shares their bump, then that can help prepare you for so many of those bumps so they don't knock you back.
Hmm.
And I think that's the I suppose the aim that I have in the way that I teach. If I share with you what's happened to me, what I learned from that, so that I can teach you that this is another thing that could happen or another way to look at something. So that helps me minimize the trauma because that was traumatic for me and for the woman. But that can help me minimize the impact or the trauma for people. But yeah, I think you're right. I think I can protect them from that, but they're going to have their own bumps because
Yeah.
that's how we learn, and we've all got different things to learn.
Right. Yeah, and maybe it's just the way you look at the bumps and the blocks and stuff, because like you said, they're all learning experiences. If you don't look at them as something that's pushing you back or holding you back, but just something that's in your way, and there's another way around that, just do that. Or if there's a way to dissolve that block, great. But if there's not, there's always another way around, I think.
Always.
Yeah.
I love that, Josh, because that's my mantra. There's always a way.
Yeah.
Always. Somebody somewhere in the world will have achieved what it is that you want to achieve.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
always, and I think this is where it comes back to what you were saying before about if you're training with somebody, then it's so easy for me to look at my students' work and say, "Wow, what an amazing teacher that dog has been for you." And they're kind of traumatized on the floor, going, "Oh my goodness, I can't do this." And I'm like, "Yeah, look at all the amazing opportunities that have been provided for you here because you're never, ever going to miss that vital piece ever again." And they're like, "No, no, I never will." But if you're doing that by yourself,
Yeah.
that can be hard.
Yeah.
It can be
Yeah.
really hard, to see it as something positive when you're feeling like pretty lousy
Yeah.
about it. It can be
Yeah, I agree. If you are feeling that way and it's not something you can resolve on your own, or you just simply have no clue how to move forward, that is the time when you seek out a teacher, a coach, a mentor, somebody who can help you get past that. For me, I started with my workshop. I stopped after that and I did my own stuff because I'm pretty self-driven anyway. But that got me so far. It got me a lot further along. But then in between, then I also worked with some other teachers at various times to help me get to the next level. And that could be what's great for somebody else as well, is just it may not be, this one-time thing. I'm going to work with this teacher and get to the end of it. It may just be this part of your journey. And then you can set that aside, do some of your own work on your own, and then come back to another teacher or that same teacher.
And I do think that, because students will often say things like, oh, I was just, some random place online and came across you. And I just think, well, we were clearly meant to meet just now.
Right.
Well, we stayed together for 5 minutes, 5 weeks, 5 years, who knows? Right. Maybe they'll then cross paths with somebody else, because we've all got something different that we can bring. But I think we both recognize the value in having that support, having that person to champion you, to have your back, to teach you, to educate you, to direct you, to keep your motivation, and most importantly, to hold your hand through the fears and the blocks.
Yeah, I want to make one more comment on this, and I don't know if you have any more on this topic, but when I first started learning, and I had these conversations, and I would send them in, and I would get some things right, some things that the people said they have no clue what that means, or that it doesn't sound right, or that's not my animal, or whatever. They said a lot of different things over the years, and that could really kill your confidence without the right perspective. And the way I got the right perspective was, over time, I saw that if I just waited, often the full story would come into the picture. I would get more details, and it would really make sense. And I would say, oh my gosh, that is why I got this conversation. It was almost like a divine storytelling it was all in place, ready for me, but I didn't see the whole picture at the time, and neither did the pet parent or the guardian. And when all the pieces came into play, then I saw, this is why I got this information. It wasn't wrong before. Yeah. It had its place, and now it makes sense. So I would say, if anybody out there is just getting conversations back, the feedback, and it's, they're getting things wrong, well, it's possible that they really are wrong, but it's also possible that they are right, or they're right in a different way, and you just don't know the full picture yet. And just tell yourself, don't just brush it off. Tell yourself, okay, I'm going to wait until all the pieces are in here, and maybe the whole picture will come into clear view soon enough. And then I'll really understand why I got this information, because I got it for a reason.
Absolutely. And it reminds me of a client I worked with a long time ago now, probably about 10, maybe even 12 years ago. And it was to do with her horse. It was a problematic horse. She was ready to rehome her horse. And so she'd come to me in that state of complete urgency. So anyway, the long and short of it was, I remember being frustrated with the session. And I mean, we got a lot of good stuff, and I was able to support her moving forward. But up until that point, animals had always given me an idea of what the big picture was. Wow. So that I could say to the person, well, look, what your dog's saying or your cat's saying is that, this is where you're both headed. This is your kind of soul journey together. So this is just the bit that you're needing to work through just now, blah, blah, blah. But with this horse, I didn't get that at all. And the horse didn't give me what the big picture was. And I was just honest with my client. And I said, I've got no sense of what the big picture is here. And normally that comes through quite easily for me. And I didn't know what to say to her. And I was also feeling, there was a part of me that was thinking, have I let her down? Have I not been good enough at being an animal communicator because I haven't got this? And so I felt I needed to kind of justify it. So what I said to her was something like, and it's actually the right thing to say because it's true, but it just kind of came from just a justifying perspective. And that's just me being really honest. And what I said to her was, but if we did have the big picture, then there would be nothing for you to learn, because you would just be going straight to the end goal. And I said that from a place of trying to justify why I wasn't able to deliver something that I believed I should have been able to deliver. Whereas now, it's like, that's not my job to deliver that. They have a journey to go through, and that's just the way that it was. Trust what the animals give you. So if we fast forward, I think it was about 4, maybe even 5 years. It was a long time. And she came back to me and she said, I have been on the most amazing journey with my horse.
Oh,
We
wow.
are like that now. She was ready to rehome this boy. She said, we're like that. I've now opened up a teaching school. They
Oh.
had just, but they had to get through that tough stuff. And
Hmm.
I remember thinking, if I'd known the big picture, she would have lost the learning.
Right.
And that would have impacted the relationship. And they
Yeah.
wouldn't be where they are now.
Yeah.
So even 4 or 5 years on, sometimes we still don't know what the big picture is. The pet guardian, the people, whatever we call them, they don't always know what the story is or what the big picture is. And I also often think that people see their animals through a lens. So I
Hmm.
often say that to students as well. Remember that the guardian is seeing the animal through their particular lens, and they might need a little bit of support and having a broader lens
Hmm.
in which to view their animal, especially if there's challenging behavior, because the animal then becomes the challenging behavior.
Yeah.
The cat that urinates all over the kitchen, they lose sight of the other aspect of that cat because the cat's just now the problem in the kitchen. So sometimes that can come into play as well, that the person is just seeing their animal through a very particular lens, so that they're not always able to take on board some of the other things that you're bringing in as an animal communicator.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you got it wrong. It just
Right.
means they're not ready to see it or they can't see it at this moment in time.
So, let me just clarify. So when you're talking about, I understand what you say, what you mean about the big picture. To me, that also means the interpretation of what you're telling them, rather than just telling them what you heard, or saw, or felt. You're also trying to interpret everything for them and giving them this package deal. Is that what you kind of meant?
Um, well, I've got a view on interpretation. So I in my own work, I try not to interpret it too
Right.
much. I try and give it as raw as I can. But sometimes we get symbolic information. So then I would say to the client, well, this is the imagery that I got, and with everything else that was going on in my body, my interpretation of that is this.
Oh,
Does
okay.
that resonate with you? And then you're leaving it to the person. So I try not to do too much interpretation, but sometimes I will just get that, that just knowing. And it's like, well, it's just there. And, if they've sent me an image or a feeling, and then I do have a kind of interpretation, but I'm always clear with the person that this is what I got in its raw form. And my interpretation, so Sarah Jane, the person, his interpretation of that is this. And then I just check out whether it resonates with them.
Hmm. Okay.
Does that answer your question,
Yeah,
Josh?
yeah. I was just, I kind of knew what you were meant, but I wasn't sure if it was just a different terminology, or because I know that it's best for us. I understand that we all have to do some amount of interpretation because we're working with our own filters, and we have to be able to
Yeah,
translate what we're
yeah,
feeling and seeing and hearing to the person. And that requires some amount of interpretation. But kind of getting rid of all that, not taking all the interpretation job on, and just passing along what you hear to the person for them to really interpret in the end, that frees you up from the responsibility, and it
yeah.
releases some of those fears and blocks, because you're not responsible, they
But
are.
no, no, yeah, absolutely. Your responsibility is to be as open as you possibly can to receive as much as you can. And your responsibility is to sensitively, lovingly, and empathically share that information with the person in as raw a format as you can. And then they can deduce their own interpretation. But there are times where we do need to use some interpretation. So I just always I'm clear about that. So it's like
Right.
this is what he showed me, and this is what I was feeling as he showed it to me. And I just had a real feeling that this was in the future. So my interpretation of that is that this may happen, or that he's leading you or guiding you towards that. Does
Right.
that resonate for you in terms of how you know and understand him and where
Yeah.
you are in your life just now? And they usually always say, yeah, I was thinking about moving to, or I was thinking about, something in the future.
Okay. Yeah. I just thought it's definitely freeing to know that you don't
Yeah,
have.
because sometimes people expect it though, don't they? Well,
Yeah.
they'll book a consultation and they'll just expect that you'll. It's like sometimes they think you can just open up the animal's mind
Right.
and just pull out all this
I
stuff
always say,
and then present it like a
yeah,
story or something.
they're
It
not
doesn't
vending
work like
machines
that.
or they're not vending machines or jukeboxes where
No,
you.
no, I love that. They're not vending machines. I'm going to use that. They're not vending machines. They don't just fire it out and you press the
Right.
button. And I often say to students and to clients as well, we as people don't even, we don't even give everything when we're being asked something. We might want to keep some things back, or we don't, if we don't, if we're not asked about a particular area, then we're not going to volunteer it because we're talking about something else.
Mhm.
So don't be disappointed that your animal friend didn't share that amazing walk that you took them on last week because I didn't ask about the walk
Right.
last week. We were talking about this instead, or he was leading the consultation with this because that was much more important to him. But I
Mhm.
think sometimes people do think you just open up a hatch in the brain and just pull it all out.
Well, I mean, you run classes on this. If you have 5 people in the class talking to the same animal,
Yeah,
if it were a vending machine, they would all
you
get
would
the
all
exact
have
same thing.
5 identical answers, and it doesn't work like that because
Yeah.
we've all got our own individual strengths.
Yeah.
So for those that feel really easily, you're going to get a really strong emotional response with what's going on with the animal, whereas somebody that maybe their strength is in visuals or even past life stuff.
Mhm.
So depending where each student's or even professional practitioners, depending where their particular strengths are, is what they're going to most get from the animal that they're working with.
Yeah. And that goes right back to where we started, which is know yourself first.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you can avoid a lot of this stuff because we keep fighting against these blocks that don't need to be there or that we've taken on from other people. We feel like we should be doing what this person does, or why can't I do it that way, or it should sound like this. But really, it's not about that. It's what's right for us. And if we can figure that out,
absolutely.
because I think I even know I've heard of professional communicators who only do communication, like let's say without the visuals or just with sound or just with one way or another. And it's strange to think that you can get the whole picture that way and you can actually be a communicator, but you can.
But if that's your key strength,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not how I work, but it makes complete sense to me. If that's your key strength and you've honed that skill,
Mm-hmm.
if you've really honed that, then you'll be able to access what you need to access through that particular communication tool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I suppose it's like so much research has been done, people that are blind or deaf,
Uh-huh.
that their other senses become
Right.
more sensitive,
Right.
and so they're more profound. So if you're a communicator that's really working with just one sense, then that's going to become more profound because
Mm-hmm.
that's where you're really honing it. And so although it's not how I work, I can absolutely
Right.
see how that would be completely possible.
Yeah. It's just good to know that we not everybody has to end up like you or like me or
No,
like anybody. We all
no,
have our own ways, and
absolutely.
yeah.
And I think, as a teacher, I remember having my first blip with a student, nothing to do with the student, in terms of her work. She was actually amazing. She's now an associate of mine, so she works alongside me. But what I discovered when I was doing marking her case studies, every time I critiqued her case studies, she wasn't following the format for validation, which is essential because that's where you get the evidence of your kind of accuracy. So I was saying to her, you've got to do the 3 sections and da 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 da. And then she was just like, oh, bugger, I always forget. And I thought, do you know what? I don't think this is the right flow for her.
Uh,
And so I had a phone call with her and I said, I think we need to find a different way. And she said, but that's what the course material says. And I said, but that it's not working for you.
Right.
So that's up to me as a teacher. I need to find a different way to make this flow for you. Because if you're following my process and it's stilting your connection, then that's no good. I don't want that for you. So let's try it this way. And then we set it up completely differently. And that worked for her. So I just said, do your thing, do it whatever way works for you. And then when you're done, come back to that first piece and get that in at the end, but feed it back to the person at the beginning. And that was how we set it up. So there was no break in her flow. She didn't need to go into logic thinking to do all the pieces that were needed for the case study. And I think that's the thing, that even though I've got a tried and tested method that works, I have to always be aware that there will be the odd student that we need to find a different way, because what's most important here is that the student works in the way that works best for them, and that's how they'll get their best results. And a good teacher will work with you on that. And they'll bend
to
your format.
Even before you find that good teacher, we all need to be aware of how we work personally, so that we can also identify, hey, I've tried this already a bunch of times and it's just not working. I need to try to find a different way. And maybe that's when they find the teacher, or maybe,
but seeing that as a positive. You see that as a positive. It's like, okay, instead of being like, oh my God, that's another thing that didn't work. It's like, hey, that's another thing that didn't work. So I know I'm not going to waste any more time or any more energy trying to do it that way, because that person's approach or that group's approach or that practice site's approach doesn't work for me. So always see that as a plus, because that's time and energy that you don't need to waste anymore.
Yeah. And if you look at each of us as a jigsaw puzzle, yes, we all put the pieces together for ourselves, and we create who we are based on what we feel is right. But if we're pulling pieces from somebody else, from other people, and trying to fit them in, maybe it'll work sometimes, but most of the time it's just not right for us. So we really need to find what's right for us.
And then it will impede your connection and your communication flow. And that's what I saw with that student. Not that her submission, there was nothing wrong with the work that she submitted, but she was missing the key pieces. And it's because they interrupted her flow. So absolutely, you can take from other people, learn from other people, apply their strategies. And if they work for you, great. If they don't, great. You know not to try it that way anymore. You need to find a different way.
Yeah, and it's not a failure when you...
No, not at all. It's a discovery.
Right.
It's a time-saving discovery, because you know not to waste any more time trying it that way.
Just like if you go to an ice cream shop and you try a flavor that you hate, you didn't fail. Nobody failed. You just don't like it.
But it's that whole thing, isn't it? When we move it into the context of animal communication, we believe it's a failure, and it's really not. It's a discovery. It's an experiment. So I'll say that a lot to students as well. Treat it as an experiment. Does this style work for me? It's an experiment. Will it work? Will it not? Take the pressure off. It's an experiment. How will this go for me today at this time? And that's another thing as well, and especially for women. So some of us are morning people, some of us are evening people. So pay attention to that as well. So if you're doing communications in the morning and you're more of a night owl, that might not be your best time to do this work. So that might be reflected in the results that you get. And if you're female, pay attention to your menstrual cycle. Even if you're no longer menstruating, you still, as a female, you still have that cycle. So pay attention to your cycle, because I know that for me, when I'm at the end of my premenstrual phase, that's not the best time for me to communicate. Can I do it if I have to? Yeah, of course I can, because I'm practiced. I'm long enough in the tooth that I could do that. But it's not when I would choose to do a complex or tricky piece of communication if I had a choice on the time frame. So I would say, actually, if we move that a couple of days, that would be better. So just pay attention to these things as well, because they do factor in.
Yeah, again, knowing yourself. It keeps coming back to that. Yeah.
And that's a practice in itself.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going back to something that you'd said, and I forgot to say, I was aware of it, and then we just went off deeper into the topic. But it was about, it wasn't, I don't think it was the setting the goals, or maybe it was actually when we were talking about the smaller goals to get us there. So you were saying, if somebody's come on the site for a month. So one of the things that I would be really suggesting that you put in place for some of these action goals is time to do your grounding, time to be in nature, time to just be with yourself. So that was something that I wanted to say, and it got missed, but it's reminded me here, because the more that we can do of that, then the better we start to know ourselves, which will support our practice.
Yeah, because all those items you mentioned, those are getting us back centered to ourselves and back in touch with our own intuition. It's not about all the external stuff. It's about really, because we have the talent in us. We have this ability. It's just a matter of clearing the way for it to function. So
and there's a beautiful quote, because sometimes, when we're doing this work and you've got your goals and you want to get on and get your conversation done, but life's busy and work's busy and you don't know how you're going to do it, and then that's the time where you really need to step back. And there's a beautiful quote by Dalai Lama where a gentleman says to me, how long do you meditate each day? And the Dalai Lama says, every day I meditate for 30 minutes. On the days when I'm busy or things are stressful, I meditate for at least an hour. It's like, that's it, from the master himself. So the busier we are and the more kind of distracted, then the more time we need to be doing these things, and then the better animal communicators will be because of it.
Okay.
So another little thing here about Blanc. Sorry, I don't know if you're going to move on there. So you said something earlier which really struck a chord with me, and that was about when you're thinking about Blanc, when you're aware of blocks, and you said something about we're drawing these things from other people. Sometimes we draw our blocks from other people as well. So if you're coming up against a block or a story in your head, so sometimes I have these words like, so mine for many years was, who do you think you are? Like, you're just little old Sarah Jane, not very special. Who do you think you are to be in a newspaper? Or who do you think you are to have a book? So that was my story for a long time. And when we have those stories, whatever they are, like you're a failure, you're never going to amount to anything, you'll never achieve anything. When you've got those stories, stop and ask yourself, where did they come from? Whose are they? Because they're usually not yours. And when you take that time to address whatever story is playing in your head and track back where that came from, it makes it easier to let it go. It's often not yours. It's something that maybe a parent said to you, maybe with the best of intentions, but you've held it and kept it, and that's what's stopping you from moving forward. And the same as the blocks. Sometimes the fears that we hold can be our parents' fears as well. So if you had parents that maybe had bad experiences, either themselves or their parents had bad experience when they stepped out to do something different from the norm, then that might become like a bit of a family block, an ancestral block, that stepping out isn't safe. So if you're feeling fear about stepping out, you'll just check in with that. Is this mine, or does it maybe belong somewhere else? And if it does, then you can give it back.
We probably should wrap things up soon. So let's, I know we talked a little about, now that we have all this in place, how do we move forward with the support that we need to keep going? Because support is really important. You can do this on your own for sure, but even your dog is support. So, I mean, how do we create the right support system for ourselves so that we can move forward and keep moving forward? Is it something that you can outline, or?
It's probably a bit tricky for me, because it's what you said right at the beginning. The top tier way to do this is to work with somebody that's been there, done it, and is ahead of where you are, and can take you to where you want to get to. But if you weren't, so that would be my first thing. Support is everything. It's like the going up Mount Everest. Are you going to do that by yourself, or are you going to go with a Sherpa? I know what I would do. So if you want to get to the top of being an animal communicator, can you do it by yourself? Yes. Will it take you longer? Sure. Will it be a bumpier road? Absolutely. Is it higher risk you'll give up and turn back? For sure. So the top, if you want to get to the top, you want to travel with somebody that can really support you. You get there quicker and you build your confidence as you go. But if that's not the route that you're taking, then it comes back to knowing what support works for you. What can you put in place to keep you on track? What goal setting solutions work for you? So you said earlier, Josh, you the reward system. That's because you're very self-driven, so you don't need to have a reward to motivate you. So it's working out what is my best way to learn. What do I need to keep me on track with my learning, and what kind of interaction, if any, do I need to keep me moving forward? And we come back to the goals again. It's like, what's your big why? Why are you here? Why do you even want to do this work? And then what is your overriding goal that you want to reach? And then what are the baby steps that you, in fact, there's a bit before that. So what's your big goal? And then what are the key markers? So there's key markers along the way. And then what are the baby steps that take you there? And that's really going to keep you on track. But ultimately it's about having support around you that works for you. So I'm a people person, so I find it much better if I've got people that I can connect with and keep me accountable, or just somebody to message and say, oh, I've just done this conversation with a cat and I just think I made the whole darn thing up. Just having that person that you can sound off against.
Well, let me just say, I agree. And for many people that will work and they can do it. Then there's a lot of other people who either can't afford at this point to, get into a workshop or a class or get a mentor or a coach or whatever, or they don't have, they live in an area where this kind of thing is frowned upon or ridiculed or whatever. And so they don't even want to tell anyone. So they don't have the support around them in that way either. So somebody in that situation, what do they do?
So I can't talk for other people because I don't know, but and I don't know if it's okay to talk about my own stuff here, free stuff. Is that okay? Because
whatever you think will help.
So I've got people in my free Facebook group that can't afford a workshop, that can't afford to do a course of study. I'm currently working with 3 different people that are in different places in India doing different work for street dogs. They have no money, so they're not going to be able to join a program or anything like that. So find a group that offers free content around animal communication. So in my group, Thursday, 1:00 UK time, I am in that group and I do 20 minutes to half an hour. Sometimes it runs over, depending on the topic. But I do roughly half an hour every Thursday on something around animal communication. It's nearly always around beginner stuff, because this is people that are wanting to learn how to keep the animals. So I've just finished a 5-part series on how to get yourself prepared to have the conversation, to make the connection with the animal. So a wee while back, I did a 3-part series on confidence building, because as we've already said, if your confidence is knocked, you need to know how to pick it back up again. Otherwise you're not going to get to where you want to get to and not make the difference that you want to make. So find a group because there are lots of groups out there, and there are groups where you'll see that it's a practice group and people just chuck in pictures. There's like 10 photographs put up every day, and there's no structure. But if that works for you and your learning style, that's the kind of group you want to be in. If you want a bit more structure, then look for a group that's got a little bit more structure, that's got educational content in it that you can access at no cost, that can really help get you going. And a site like yours, where you've got loads of free value-laden content here. So they're the places that you would want to go if you couldn't afford to sign up to a course of study or work with somebody.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because not only on the site is there the regular practice areas, but we have the practice dens, and many of the teachers who run those practice dens, they run them for their students, but they also open it up to anybody, and they welcome anybody to come in and practice with the animals there, and the teachers will give good supportive feedback, the kind that you really want in order to move forward, because that's the goal. And I know you have a den on there, and they can start there. If you look in the Facebook feed on Speak, I posted the link to your practice group. I think you might have as well.
Oh yeah.
So
I think I saw that you'd posted it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, do them all if you can. Go for sign up for a ball and see what works best for you.
Because it comes back to what you were saying before. Like there's one size doesn't fit all. Sign up for them all, see what works for you, and then just discard the rest.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm checking to see if there's any questions out there. If anyone has a question before we sign off here, this is the time to ask it. Yeah, I don't see anything specific. If I'm missing something and you did ask a question, ask again, and I'll see it at the end of the feed.
Well, this will be the first time ever I think I've done a live where there's not been a question. But if anything comes in after we close down, let me know, and I'm happy to comment after we're finished.
Well, there's lots and lots and lots of people who can resonate with everything that you're saying. So, and love all this stuff. So, no questions, just thank you. Okay.
Just going.
Yeah.
But as my grandmother used to say, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yes. Yeah. If you do have a question that you didn't think of, this video will be up. It'll remain here on the page. And if you do have any questions for Sarah Jane, go for it. Maybe she'll come back to see, or I'll let you know.
I'll come back, or you can let me know. I'll be more than happy to come in and make comment after the live event.
Yeah, and they can reach you at your website here as well. And I think you have links to all your resources and courses.
There's actually I'd forgotten on the website. There's a free guide for how to get into the communication zone. So it's great for beginners. It's been, I've created it for those that are just dipping their toe in. And I think there's seven different approaches, 7 different things that you can do to help set you up for a conversation with an animal.
That sounds great. That's a good place to start then, everybody. I'm not understanding some of these things here. I don't know. Kim is asking a question, but Kim, I'm not sure I understand your question. Media rate? Okay. Oh, here we go. Now it makes sense. Here we go. Do I need to meditate before trying to speak to pets? Is there any set of steps?
Okay, so I'm working on the assumption that people that are watching this don't have a long-term relationship with me. Those that do will know that I've got views about meditation, and my views simply are meditation is one of the best ways to prepare yourself for animal communication. Meditation is not something that I found very easy to do. So I have run webinars on how to communicate with animals without doing meditation. So if you're thinking, oh, if I have to do meditation, I'm never going to be able to do it, please know that you can still do this work, even if meditation is not your natural go-to. So meditation is one of the best ways to quieten your own mind, still your physical body, energetic body, mental body, and really open everything up. But meditation isn't easy for everyone. So there are other things that you can do. And the guide that I mentioned, it's on my website, it's free. And there's steps in there as alternatives to meditation. So one of the things that I encourage people to do is just get outside in nature and do what I call the task absorption technique. So it's where you just really absorb yourself into a task. And that task could be walking, could be looking at a tree, where you're just really using all your senses. Even if you're just out in your back garden, 5 minutes before knuckling down to do the connection, just absorb all your senses, and then you're really present and in the moment. And that's another way to bring yourself into that stillness without actually sitting and oming for an hour. And I don't say that sarcastically, I don't mean it to sound sarcastic, but it's not. Meditation is a practice, and it can take a while to get there. So do you need to meditate? No, but I do think it's important to find your own unique way to get to that point of stillness if you're not using meditation. So I hope that's clear for you.
Yeah, that is the point that we're trying to make, is that it's not about a step that you have to take, it's the end result that you want. So if you can get to that stillness place where you can be clear enough to communicate, any way you can do that.
Any way, as long as you know the end goal. Yeah. And the end goal is to be still enough to hear the animal's communications. Yeah. So for some people that route's meditation. For others, it's going for a run. Mm-hmm. I used to run, so my mind was always clear when I was running. For other people, it'll be a walk in nature. For others, it might be sitting watching a burning flame. As long as you know what you want to get to as your end goal, take whatever steps feel right and best for you.
Right. Okay, thank you. I think we have another question here. How can I get past blocks with my own animals, which I know is very, very common?
Yeah. So sometimes it can be more difficult to communicate with our animals, and for most people it is a bit tricky, especially when you're learning. That said, there are people that communicate with their animals more easily. So I don't want to make this something as a one size fits all and say it's too difficult to communicate with your own animals, because some people can do that easily. Even as a professional practitioner, I have to work harder at communicating with my own animals, and I've been doing this for nearly 20 years. So I don't see that as a weakness. I just see that as what I'm still learning from my own animals. So what I would be encouraging you to do, Sue, depending on what the issue, depending on what the block is, and depending on how urgent the need to communicate with your animals is, or if it's just for exploratory, curiosity, fun, I would recommend that, unless you needed to know something urgently, that you build up your practice with other people's animals first, so that you can start to get that objective sense of how your flow is in your communication work and what strengths are coming up for you in your communication work. And then when you feel a little bit more experienced, then go back and try that with your own animals, because often the blocks are because we care, the outcome matters to us, and we have a vested interest in what's going on with them. And then sometimes we can be too emotionally invested, and if we're worried about them and we're feeling concerned, then that emotion can create a block to the communication, because our animals sometimes are basically saying, bugger off. I don't want that onslaught of upset or that onslaught of grief, from you. So I'm deafening you. I don't want to have to deal with that. So if we've got a lot going on for ourselves and we're worried about our animals when we're trying to communicate with them, sometimes that can create a block all by itself too. So my best suggestion for you, Sue, is build up your practice with other people's animals where you can get objective feedback and then start to get clear on what your strengths are as an animal communicator, and then ask your animals if they would be willing to help you, and then start the communication with them from that place when you know that you really can do this.
Yeah. You ready for one more, or are you?
Yeah.
Okay. Kim says, does balancing my own chakras regularly help me to communicate easier with animals?
This is a really interesting question, Kim. So first of all, balancing your own chakras regularly is going to be great for you anyway, regardless of animal communication. But without getting into the whole story, I didn't used to practice animal communication. I didn't even know it existed. So I didn't know anything about animal communication at all. And it was when I did my chakra energy diploma that the doors opened for me. So as an energy practitioner that you practices professionally with chakras, with the chakra system, then I would be saying absolutely. So the more you're working on your own chakras, and the more that you're clearing the gunk, so that's what I had to do. I had a lot of stuff in my heart to clear. And I think once that started to shift energetically, that's when the door opened to the animal world. So absolutely, if you're actively working on your chakras, then you're actively clearing your own system. And the clearer our system is, the easier it is to connect and communicate. Great question.
Yeah. But like you said, before people knew how to do this, they still were able to communicate with animals. So it works, but it's not, it may not be the thing that you absolutely need. It's probably just helpful.
So if we look at it, because I think that's an important point that you've made there, Josh, because if we look at animal communication as being an intrinsic capability, what we all have, we're all born with it, and it's conditioned out of us, or we for whatever reason, we shut that muscle down, because I just see it like a muscle. So we all have the capability to build that communication muscle up again. And like anything, so it's like you go to the gym. So you go into the gym, you want to get fit, but you can just go to the gym and train, or you can go to the gym and train. You can also be looking at your diet. You can also be looking at your sleep. You can also be looking at other things. So I think that's how to view this. So if anybody else is listening to this and going, oh my God, I don't know anything about chakras. How do I balance chakras? Or do I need to do that as well? It's like, no, these are just all extra things that we can do to support the fundamental piece of connection and communication, which we can all do. Yeah. It's just finding our unique way to open that and find that muscle.
And be aware of how it makes you feel after, if it does make a difference. Because I have tried, when I was learning, I tried every single possible thing out there, crystals and chakra clearings and the frequencies, the different frequencies, and binaural beats and music,
all of that. Yeah.
Everything, every
subliminal clearing while I'm sleeping.
Yeah, but I never found that any of it really helped me dramatically, and so I eventually let some of those go, and I kept whatever seemed to be working for me. And now I'm in my own routine where I kind of know what works for me. So it's just a process. Try it all. I heartily recommend trying it all. And that's why I offer so many options on the site. Just try it. If it doesn't work
for you. Because that didn't work for you, but it might work brilliantly for Kim.
Yeah.
And certainly the chakra work was the door that opened for me. But that was because I had lots of stuff that was closed down. So it comes back to this key piece, doesn't it? And I think we've discovered actually that the key piece to this is knowing yourself, knowing what's going on, knowing what the stories are, knowing where they came from, knowing what your best learning style is, knowing what kind of support you need. And the only way we can get really clear on knowing ourselves is gifting ourselves time to be with ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Coming all back to ourselves again.
Yeah.
Kim has one more follow-up question. Are you up for it?
Yeah. Okay. Honestly, just fire away.
Okay. So she says, I go too much to my head. And how do I communicate from my heart space when I'm getting into my head?
So you really don't want to be in your head, my lovely, because then we start to logicize everything and we get into the analytical part. So I talk a lot about dropping down into the heart. And so the easiest way to explain that is, first of all, what we answered, I can't remember whose question it was about the meditating.
That was,
Um,
I think that
Kim
was
as well, wasn't it?
Kim as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was Kim. So when you asked about the meditating will help clear the head stuff and help you get out your headspace. But there are other ways to get out your headspace, as I was mentioning before. So it might be about going out into nature. It might be just about 5 minutes, just focusing on the breath or focusing on what you're seeing. So that all those tasks will take you out of your headspace. So when I talk about dropping into your heart space, just take your awareness to the heart. So just whether you do that with your eyes open or closed, just take your awareness to the heart. So it might be that you visualize your heart, you imagine that you're at your heart, you hear your heart, you see your heart, you feel your heart, and then you just pay attention to the rhythm of your heart. And then you're in your heart, you're in that heart space. And when your focus is here and everything that's happening here, then it can't be up here at the same time. It can't be in two places at once. So I hope that's helpful to you, Kim.
Yeah. Thank you.
So you want to get out the headspace first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things, just to take that out of the equation, because it's got a mind of its own, because it is its own mind.
Yeah. And if you're up there, you can't really be down here, and we want to be here for our communication work.
Yeah.
So again, it's finding for you, Kim, and for everyone else that's listening and is resonating for you, because that's usually one of the biggest stumbling blocks, getting out the head, quietening the busy mind, stilling the busyness. That's usually one of the biggest stumbling blocks. So if that's the case for you, you just want to find your unique way of getting out of that space. For one of my students, it was dance.
Oh.
It was, in fact, no, it wasn't dance. It was being a conductor. So I gave her the task absorption technique to do because she just couldn't get out of her headspace. And I said, just focus on a task, anything. It could be mundane. It could be washing dishes, chopping vegetables, but just focus completely. And you want to do that for about 3 to 5 minutes. And that was what I set her as a task. And she emailed me and she said, I was thinking 3 to 5 minutes. Most classical music is about 5 minutes. So she switched her radio station to classic FM and she was the conductor, just in her room, moving to the music. And before she knew it, she wasn't like dancing around the room, but she was in the music, in the flow, imagining that she was bringing in the drums and bringing in this. And her mind was nowhere but in that place. Mm-hmm. And that was her out her head, ready to come into here and do her connection work.
Yeah. And I'll add that for me, I like simple, but I know it's not simple when you first are starting out. It feels like there's a lot of elements that you have to get into place before this actually works. But I think once you do stuff like what you're talking about for a little while, you do kind of get your body into that groove so that it's easy for you to go there almost on its own. You kind of know where to go after that. And maybe you don't need all these steps after a while.
No, I would agree completely. I like to keep things very simple as well. And this is what I talked about in my group just on Thursday about, making that connection. Some animal communicators, quite rightly, will say you don't need a process, you just connect. But I think when you're just learning, it's really important to have a process because it gives you something to hold on to. And for me, it's about kind of holding your hand and helping you get to that point of making the connection. So I have a process that I use, but it's kind of like what we said about getting out the head. Once you've used it and you know where you're wanting to get to, you don't need the process. You can just go there. But sometimes it's helpful to have steps. But if you practice them, then you can get there straight to the end point without doing the steps. I suppose it's like driving. How many times feel like saying raise your hand, but I can't see anybody. You know, it's like, how many times? Raise your hand. Just do it for me. Just join in. Raise your hand if you've left work or left somewhere and suddenly you're parking up in front of your house. You think, I don't even remember getting here.
Mhm.
It's like you just were on that automatic drive and
Right.
you're just suddenly home, but you have no real recollection of the turns that you took because you've done it so often. You kind of just got yourself home. You're on that home and pigeon thing. And so it's the same with our animal communication. Keep it simple. You know where you want to get to, and those steps that might feel like a lot to learn, a lot to know, and a lot to do when it's all new, that you'll get that feeling of just being able to get there.
Yeah.
It will come. I promise. I absolutely promise it
Yeah.
will come.
Yeah. And practicing also puts you into that autopilot mode, because just like when you're learning a piece of music, if anyone's a musician out there, it's hard at first. You have to, every note, you have to figure it out and remember where it goes in the whole process. But after a while, you know it, and you don't even have to think about it. It's no longer in your head; it's in your body, and you just go.
Yes.
You don't have to think about it.
Yeah, like driving. When you learn to drive,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's different in the States, but in the UK, we're taught to drive at 10 to 2. You know, our hands are on
Yeah.
the steering wheel at 10 to 2. And then, well, I know that you guys, I think you're mainly automatic cars, but here in the UK, it's mainly,
Yeah.
we use a gear stick, a shift gear. So it's kind of like clutching, move the gear stick, looking over the shoulder, checking the mirrors. It's like clunk, clunk, clunk,
Yeah.
clunk, clunk. Yet, if you've been driving for a while, you don't even think about any of that. It's a fluid movement.
Yeah.
Change the gear, check the mirrors, do look over your shoulder. So it's one fluid movement that you're not even thinking about. But when you first learn to drive, it's all these movements: mirror, signal, maneuver, gear stick, clutch, brake. So yeah, it's exactly that, and it will
Yeah.
come with practice.
Yeah, I think we're gonna wrap this up. I know Kim has one additional question, but I think we've covered it. It's just about affirmations and imagining that you're an animal communicator, which I know you've already mentioned that could be one of your goals. Is you put it down. I want to be an animal, whatever you want to say, and affirmations just all support that. It's just another one of these tools that you can try, and if it works for you, great.
It's another tool. And here's the thing with affirmations, and I'm kind of quite big on this. We could probably do a whole other topic on this one, but affirmations have to be written in the present tense. So there's no point saying I will be an animal communicator, because it's in the future. And so it will always be in the future.
Right.
So you want to put into the here and now. So it's I am an animal communicator. I am a confident animal communicator. So that's your positive affirmation said in the here and now, and you want to say it with feeling. The little caveat that I'll put in there comes back to the blocks and the fears, because it doesn't matter how many times you say that to yourself. If you've got a block that's bigger than your affirmation around fear, then your block's going to win. So absolutely, I'm a huge fan of affirmations, but I just want to be clear that when people come to me and they say, oh, affirmations don't work, they're right. They don't work when you don't put the feeling in. You need to feel what it feels like to be that communicator. You want to feel how grateful you are, how blessed you are, how privileged you are to be able to do the animal communication work that you're doing as that professional animal communicator. So you really want to feel it. So if you're not feeling it, it doesn't change the body's energetic or physiological state. So it doesn't change the way you actually feel about doing the steps that you need to do to take you there. And then the other reason why affirmations don't work is if you, especially around money, so that's an easy one to use. So if you're saying like, I'm so grateful to be a billionaire, yet down here you go, huh? You can hardly pay your bills at the moment. There's no way you're going to be a billionaire. So it's just too big and it's just too out there. So if you find that that's coming up for you, then make your affirmation something that's more on the believable side. Like, I can do a case study. I am doing a case study, or I'm doing a conversation every week for the next month. And I am so grateful that I am doing a communication or a conversation every week. So just be mindful of that part of the affirmation too. Because if you've got a big fear going on, that will override the affirmation. But yeah, bring them in and use them as a tool. They're so powerful.
Yeah, and it's cool that you mentioned that if it doesn't work one way, just change the affirmation until it works, because it just may be a matter of wording, or what your mind wants to work with.
I would recommend to students, I actually do an affirmation program. So I always say to students in my program, write it out 4 or 5 times, like, sorry, different wording. So it's what you were saying, Josh. So write 4 or 5 different permeations of what you want. So don't just take the first one, do 4 or 5 and then see which resonates with you the most. Because once you start kind of getting into it, you might tweak the language a little bit, and then you'll end up usually with your most powerful, most resonant affirmation, and that's the one that will create the most change for you.
All
So
right.
you're right. Change the words, work with the words.
Yeah. Oh, sounds great. Well, this has been so great. We
I didn't
covered.
realize we'd been here over 2 hours.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
fine with that. I'm fine with that. It's a long,
yeah,
long time for
there's a
some.
lot to talk about, and we covered a lot of ground, and I think it covered a lot of the key points that a lot of learners, come up against all the time, and I'm glad we got through them, and I really appreciate all your insight and experience on this.
You're so welcome. And if people go back to everything that we said, you've got your action plan to
Yeah,
take away. You like, what's your big why? What is it that you want to do to make your difference with the animals? And then what are your kind of key markers? And then what are the smaller steps that you need to take? And then what support do you need around you? What kind of learning approach do you need? And there you've got it. It's all laid out step by step to really help you get to where you want to be so that you can make the difference that you desire to make with the animals. You can do that.
yeah. Good luck, everybody. We're behind you, and we're here to support
Absolutely.
you whenever you need. Just reach out. Okay. Thank you very much, Sarah Jane.
You're so welcome. Thank
I will probably be speaking to you later in the month, because we have another webinar coming up,
you.
and it's going to be about building your confidence. And Sarah Jane will be talking about that, which is one of her specialties. Okay. Good luck, everyone. Have a good practice month.
Bye.